Afternoon class, we're going to spend, I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but a little time talking about just the life of a claim. And when we talk about a life of a claim, it depends on who you talk to as kind of when that life of the claim starts. You normally, if you're economist, you think of, T equals zero as the time it starts. And then somewhere out here, T equals infinity is kind of when it ends. So, and again, it's going to depend on who you talk to. Some health plans, talk about the life of the claim starting exactly when it starts to go through the health plan's payment cycle. Uh, Providers talk about the life of a claim starting when they start filling out the information on either the CMS 1500 or the UB04. From my perspective, and it's always been my contention that the life of a claim starts, it actually starts when a member or an employer group signs up with a payer. So the employer group signs up, and to me, that's T equals zero, because at that point, information is starting to be collected that is going to be utilized in the actual processing and payment of that claim. So that's always been my approach, and that's the approach I'm going to take when we're talking about the life of the claim, at least from my perspective. The other question that comes to mind is individuals have asked me, whether it's in class or at conferences or just in just daily work activities, they ask me, what do informatics professionals, whether it's on, and for the most part, I'm going to talk about on the payer side, but what do they actually use claims information for? And there is a long, I mean, it is a litany of opportunities to collect claims information and drive reporting processes. Some health plans have entire shops dedicated to nothing but the reporting process. Some health plans take it, or some payers take, and they parse out their team. So they have some that are focused on uh, CMS type reporting or Medicare type reporting. They may have another shop that does nothing but Medicaid reporting and another shop that does only commercial reporting. So it depends on how the payer is set up, but you have a significant number of analysts and informatics professionals, especially on the payer side, that are going to be generating reports. And you're also going to have that same bunch on the provider side, or a similar type bunch on the provider side. And on the plan side, you've got CMS reporting, you've got state reporting, you've got internal reporting, you've got association reporting. You may be submitting reports to American Medical Association, American Hospital Association, both on the payer side and on the provider side. And if you're on the payer side especially, you may be generating what they call HEDIS reports or STAR reports, risk adjustment reports. All of those last three reports actually drive additional payments that payers can accrue from government agencies. You've got, especially on the payer side and on the provider side, you've got professionals that are using information from the adjudication process or the payment process of claims, and they're using it to determine contractual rates. We've talked about it in the past. You've got the payer sitting on one side, you got the provider sitting on the other side, and if you think about they're at both ends of the spectrum, and they're setting those negotiation range parameters, the upper bounds and the lower bounds, and if you think about it, the provider is setting the lower bounds. They know what is the least amount they will take. The payer is setting the upper bounds. They know what is the most they will pay. And through the negotiation process, it's going to meet somewhere in the middle at a point that both sides feel as equitable to both parties. And that's why the negotiation process is so important between providers and payers. And information is going to drive those rates that both the provider and the payer go into the negotiation process with. So remember, payer is going to set the upper bound. they have a certain dollar value that they will not go above. Provider's going to set the lower bound because they have a certain dollar value they won't go below. And it's the negotiation process where, in most cases, they meet in the middle somewhere. So they achieve some type of middle ground. Also, you use information for the more on the payer side maybe than on the provider side, but information is vital to clinical policies, medical management policies, population health policies. And so you've got individuals scouring through this sea of information, and we'll get into it a little later in the class when we talk about big data, but health plans and providers and government agencies are sitting on this expansive sea of information that is available for all parties to use as they drive their day-to-day operational and financial processes. And then lastly, on both the payer and the provider side, and to a lesser extent on the government side, you're using that information to manage third-party, I'll call them vendors, but third-party consulting entities that offer their goods and services to either assist payers in attaining their financial and utilization goals, or they're assisting providers as they try to attain their utilization and financial goals. And with that kind of a background, I want to spend just, again, go back a couple of minutes. So probably modules 4, 5, and 6, we went through a lot of coding basics. We went through how to complete the CMS 1500. And then I think it was in module 6, we talked about how to complete the UB04. And with that in mind, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about payer information files and what kind of information files payers are going to try to construct. And then probably in the next segment, we're going to talk about the type of files that providers are going to try to construct. So when you're talking about on the payer side, you've got probably the first thing, and I've got a set of notes. We have a PowerPoint that I've loaded out on Canvas that you can grab. But the first thing on the payer files are the provider files. And the provider files typically come from the credentialing process. And when I say the credentialing process, somebody in network management in conjunction with payment integrity and medical management are getting together, and they are determining, for the most part, whether to accept a provider into the network. And as they accept that provider into the network, the provider should be going through a credentialing process. It can either be an in-house credentialing process where individuals within that payer organization are taking information that the providers or the provider group is sending them, and they're verifying or validating or vetting, depending on what verb you want to use, but they are validating that information. They're looking at malpractice incidences, they're looking at any criminal records, they're looking at what the resume of a circular vita looks like on the provider. They're going back and validating that the provider actually, went to medical school, maybe even go back as far as undergraduate, but at least in a medical school where they did the internship, where they did the residency, trying to validate as much of that information as possible. Again, you can do it in-house, or you can allocate that out to the medical group or the provider entity in what's called a delegated credentialing process. And typically, it's written in a lot of payer contracts that this updating of the credentialing process falls under the purview of the provider group, that they're supposed to provide updates on a 30-day basis. So once a month, they're supposed to provide any updates, any new providers that have come into the group, any providers that have left the group, any provider that is retired, passed away, no longer practicing medicine. If there are information available on updates to medical degrees, maybe on issues with criminal negligence. So that is the responsibility of the provider group to update those provider files. Again, in most most health plans that I work for, it's usually a 30-day. So once a month, they have to update that. Also, that provider file contains the contractual information. A provider may be practicing at 4 locations within a given market, and each of those 4 locations, and we talked about it when we were filling out the 1500, there's a place for the National Provider Identification Number, that NPI, but there's also additional blocks or cells on that 1500 where the provider can include the identification number that the payer has assigned to them. And so you could have 4 different locations for a provider with 4 different IDs that the health plan is assigned to them based on the location of those 4 offices or those 4 practice positions. And each of those 4 practice positions could have different financial arrangements set up. So the provider files are extremely important when it comes to generating and actually paying for that claim as it comes through the system. Let's see what else. So what you're doing for, and again, when it comes to the payer side of the house, the 3 big files that they're most concerned with: provider file, member file, and a paid claims file. And it's the integration of these 3 files in the operational and financial aspect within the health plan or within the payer that determines many of the operational and financial decisions that the payer makes, either on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, annual basis, constantly looking at the integration of these 3 files. It's also the 3 main files that what we in the payer side of the house will refer to as vendors, third-party entities that receive these files either on a monthly, bi-weekly, and sometimes, depending on the size of the health plan and the size of the payer, they may get them on a daily basis. And when I say on a monthly, bi-weekly, daily basis, these are file updates that you will send out to these vendors. And the vendors are there to either supplement or complement the information or the resources that a health plan has as they go through their daily activities. The second file that payers rely on, and again, it's one of the big 3, it's a member file. And the member file is basically driven by the information that the health plan receives from the employer groups. So you have a sales team, they're out there, pitching the contracts that the health plan is developed based on, could be co-pays, could be co-insurance, could be deductibles, scope of the services that are covered by a particular benefit plan. And they're out there, the sales teams are selling these either to individual members or to employer groups. And basically, it's up to the sales team to ensure that the information that the employer groups send to the health plan to load into the system and develop these member files is accurate. In other words, it's up to the sales team to vet it. They can use state employment forms. They can use information from the employer groups themselves to vet this information. But to me, this is the start of the life cycle of the claim. Sales is taken, they've sold a book of business to an employer group. That employer group is going to send in information to the health plan or to the payer that covers, let's say the employer group has 100 members. So those are going to be, from most payers' perspective, those are going to be 100 contracts. Each of those contracts can have multiple members assigned to them. Can have the employee of the entity, can have their spouse or partner, can have any kids, and it's all tied up under that. And that information is sent to the health plan. So some of it is self-reported by the employees, some of it is self-reported by the employer group, but that's the information that the employer group provides as they agree to contracts. The third of the big 3 is the claims paid file, and it's usually updated on a daily basis in most health plans or most payer groups, and it is the information that the health plan, whether it's payment integrity, whether it's actuarial, whether it's finance, maybe network management, maybe medical management, could be internal audit. This is the information that all of these internal functional areas are going to use to drive their operational efficiency and to drive their strategies as the health plan attempts to minimize costs while at the same time maximizing coverage to the members that are included under that health plan's membership umbrella. The fourth file that a payer maintains or a payer utilizes is going to be the government files. We're going to get, the payer and not only the payer, but the provider, and we'll talk about the provider in a few minutes, but on the payer side, you're going to get files from CMS. You're going to get DRG information, you're going to get CPT code information, you're going to get, HCPC code information. You're going to get a lot of not only code information, but financial information that is going to be utilized in the process of determining contractual rates in the process of adjudicating or paying for these claims. For the most part, if you're looking at DRGs, those are updated on a financial year basis. And remember, the government's financial year is October the 1st to September the 30th. HCPC code information, CPT code information, for the most part, is updated on a calendar year, January the 1st to December the 31st. So these files that are sitting out there and these files that are coming in the door, whether it's, and again, you've got a cooperation between CMS or cooperation between the American Medical Association that's driving not only HCPC CPT codes and the rates that are assigned to those codes. So it's that cooperation between those two agencies or those two entities that are driving the reimbursement information that health plans are going to use, either use directly in negotiating contracts, or they may use it as a base rate when it comes to negotiating contracts. You're also going to get some state Medicaid information. You're going to get, state and federal regulation files, association information. You get a lot of government files that most payers typically load into their information warehouse that you as a healthcare informatics professional can go out and grab and bring into your coding process to generate the reporting format that is required. You can also have consultant and vendor files. And when I'm talking about vendors, I'm talking about third-party vendors. If you're on the payer side, you'll hear vendors Optum, you'll hear Change Healthcare, you'll hear Zealous, you'll hear Multiplan, you'll hear Cotivity, Advent Health Partners, a lot of vendors that are floating out there that are helping payers, especially health plans, to improve the efficiency of their reimbursement process, to improve their efficiency of ensuring that the claims are paid correctly and accurately. You've got COB files, and we talked about COB both when we were discussing filling out the CMS 1500 and the UB04. And when you're talking about COB, it's coordination of benefits. Some health plans, at least Blue Cross Blue Shield, where I worked, it was, COB, coordination benefits, rolled up under other party liability. And it wasn't just coordination of benefits. As you determine which health plan was responsible or had the liability for paying the claim, you're also worried about workers' comp, motor vehicle accidents, subrogation. A lot of types of information goes into ensuring which party is liable or which party is responsible for paying that healthcare claim. When you're talking about COB files, you've got, you'll hear vendor names like, again, Optum, Change Healthcare, CAQH out of DC. You hear individuals in the industry talking about a section of 111 file, which is a coordination of benefit that health plans work back and forth with Medicare with. You've got a HUE file, a similar file that you work back and forth with CMS with. You've got files on state Medicaid. If you're an individual that you're, for the most part, at least in every state I've worked, you're not supposed to have commercial insurance at the same time you have Medicaid insurance. And then there are going to be some supplemental files. And it's going to be the supplemental files that may have some uh, additional information. They could have some, different definitions for the HCPC codes files. They can have revenue code type information, numbers and descriptions and that type of information. Um, DRG, MDC, information that drives the DRG groups. Again, you can find that out on the CMS website. I think I actually gave you links in Canvas on how to get to that information. And you've got information setting out there, especially descriptive information when it comes to pharmaceutical type information. So pharmaceuticals are billed with an NDC, and that information is going to be setting out there. And with that, I think I'm going to stop for a few minutes. When we come back, we're going to jump in and talk about the provider informational files. Talk to everybody soon.